Now, the biggest question of Turkey maybe is the lack of opposition. And this CHP, the main oppositional party, we call it center-left, but I know that they are at the center, but I am not sure about being left or not. But CHP and MHP, Turkish Nationalist Party, they are really very weak. And they are losing all the time since 2002, the beginning of the AK Party government or power. They are still losing their influence. So we cannot look at an alternative within this oppositional party. The unique challenge to AK Party government power is coming from Kurdish political movement. And Professor Günther will talk about this, but I can say some words about this, that only this Kurdish political movement led by PKK and Abdullah Öcalan, they can challenge, this movement can challenge the AK Party government. And because of this reality, every people or circle or power who want to challenge AK Party government, they have only one alternative to invest in. This is Kurdish political movement. But the question here is that Kurdish political movement can challenge this AK Party government, can destabilize the country economically, politically, etc., but they cannot be an alternative to AK Party. Because when you look at the demography of Turkey, the Kurds is a minority. And we know also that all Kurds are not voting for this political movement. At least half of them, at least, maybe more than half of Kurdish population is voting for AK Party. But still, this political movement is really challenging this AK Party, but it cannot be an alternative to the government. So we should look at, for the next 2 years of Turkey, we should look at the power of the Kurdish political movement, the power of destabilization of Turkey, of Turkish politics, and challenging the government. But mainly, we should look at, for the next 2 years, what would happen between AK Party on the presidential election. Who would be the candidate? I think that Tayyip Erdogan would be the candidate. And if he would be the candidate, he would be elected. But still, Abdullah Gül didn't pronounce his intention. He might be a candidate a second time, but I don't personally think that, Tayyip Erdogan and Abdullah Gül would run each other. That's impossible. One of them would be the main candidate of AK Party and much probably would be elected. But the question is here, who would replace Tayyip Erdogan as prime minister? And what would be the relationship between this new prime minister and this new president? And the formula is the simple and quick formula is that there's exchange of the position between Tayyip Erdogan and Gül. And Gül would be the prime minister and Tayyip Erdogan would be the president. But here the question is that if Abdullah Gül would be a prime minister, he would be a very strong prime minister, that so strong that Tayyip Erdogan might not prefer him as a prime minister. Okay, that's all.
Thank you very much. And let me follow this up with one question, asking you for a very brief answer. So the interpretation here is that this is mostly driven by personal ambition of the prime minister. He wants to become president so he can stay in power forever. As an observer in Turkey, do you think there's an argument to be made that the implementation of a presidential system actually is good for the Turkish public and for the political system?
I personally don't think that the presidential system would be very good, would be better for Turkey. There are some people who prefer it, and there, like me, there are some people who are against it, but we should have a democratic and participative debate for each part of the society. But in Turkey, the question is that Prime Minister Erdogan is really dominating in every sphere of the public life, political discussion. So it is really very difficult to criticize his position. And if he let free people to discuss his proposition, we would have a good solution or good end, whether presidential system or not. But imposing the presidential system is not good.
Thank you very much. So you,
Can I just intervene?
can we keep this for, maybe you can incorporate this into your remarks later on, and then we'll have a chance to exchange a little bit on the panel. I think Rujen has set up the stage perfectly for Professor Gunter. He has mentioned some of the issues that are important with regard to the Kurdish question. So I'd like to turn it over to you, Professor.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Is this working? During the summer and fall of 2009, the long festering Kurdish problem in Turkey seemed on the verge of a solution when the ruling AK Party government of Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan announced a Kurdish opening. Erdogan asked, if Turkey had not spent its energy, budget, peace, and young people on combating terrorism, if Turkey had not spent the last 25 years in conflict, where would we be today? Even the insurgent PKK leader, Öcalan, who of course has been in prison since 1999, briefly took Turkey's Kurdish opening seriously. What happened? Well, it soon became evident that the AK Party had not thought out its Kurdish opening very well, and then proved rather inept in trying to implement it. Specific proposals were lacking. Furthermore, despite AK Party appeals to support its Kurdish opening, all three of the parliamentary opposition parties declined. Even the pro-Kurdish DTP failed to be engaged because it declined to condemn the PKK as the AK Party government had demanded. Erdogan, too, began to fear that any perceived concessions to the Kurds would hurt his Turkish nationalist base and future presidential hopes. The PKK's peace group gambit on October 18, 2009, to return home to Turkey 34 PKK members from northern Iraq also badly backfired when these Kurdish expatriates were met by huge welcoming receptions at the Arbor border crossing with Turkey and later in Diyarbakir. These celebrations were broadcast throughout Turkey and proved too provocative for even moderate Turks who perceived the affair as some sort of PKK victory parade. Then, on December 11, 2009, the Constitutional Court, after mulling over the issue for more than 2 years, suddenly banned the pro-Kurdish DTP because of its close association with the PKK. Although the BDP, excuse me for all these alphabet soup things, but that's how we do it, the BDP quickly took the DTP's place, coming when it did. The state-ordered banning of the pro-Kurdish DTP party could not have come at a worse time and put the kiss of death to the Kurdish opening. However, TESEF, a Turkish think tank, stepped forward with new recommendations, one of which was the references to Turkish identity and Turkishness in many laws and the Turkish constitution do not comply with the multi-ethnic structure of Turkish society. These constitutional references should be changed despite the dictum in Article 4 of the current Constitution that, quote, they cannot be changed. Changing them cannot even be suggested. The AK Party government, of course, supposedly has been considering writing a new, more democratic constitution for Turkey for many years. The success of its referendum on several constitutional amendments held on September 12, 2010, reinvigorated this process. Now, in addition, the current 10% electoral threshold that makes it so difficult for pro-Kurdish political parties to win any seats in the Turkish parliament should also be lowered in line with current EU standards. In addition, the government should accept mother tongue education and usage in courts and drop its prosecution of Kurdish politicians, lawyers, and civil society leaders, the so-called KCK trials that are continuing to this very day. One main problem now, of course, was with whom to talk. Although even Turkish observers recognize that Öcalan and the PKK have legitimacy among a considerable portion of the Kurds, despite all the state's efforts to discredit them, it would be difficult for the state formally and openly to negotiate with them, given how the state has always defined them as mere terrorists. Nevertheless, secretive talks with Öcalan were occurring. And at the same time, other high-ranking PKK leaders also were talking with Turkish MIT intelligence officials in Oslo. Although these secretive negotiations ended in failure, at the time they were enough to make many hopeful. In essence, the imprisoned PKK leader Öcalan has proposed democratization and decentralization of the Turkish state into what he has at times referred to as a democratic republic. Such decentralization would be based on the guidelines already listed in the European Charter of Local Self-Government adopted in 1985 and presently ratified by 41 states, including Turkey, with numerous important conditions, however. But the Turkish Republic, created by Ataturk in 1923, has always been a strongly centralized state. Radical decentralization, as proposed by the BDP and Öcalan, goes against this strong mindset. On the other hand, many states, such as Britain and France, famous for their centralized unitary structure, have recently rolled back centuries of constitutional forms in favor of what they saw as necessary decentralization. Far from leading to their breakup as states, this decentralization has satisfied local particularisms and checked possible demands for future independence. Thus, far from threatening national unity, decentralization might help preserve it. However, given how more than half of Turkey's ethnic Kurdish population does not even live in its historic southeastern Anatolian homeland, but is scattered throughout the country, especially in such cities as Istanbul, sometimes referred to as the largest Kurdish city in the world, as well as the fact that a sizable number of Turkey's ethnic Kurds have mostly assimilated into a larger Turkish civic identity. Given these facts, radical decentralization that would be incompatible with modern Turkey's heritage may not be necessary. What is needed, however, is for the state to begin seriously talking with the most important, genuine representatives of its disaffected Kurdish minority, and this, of course, means the PKK.